The learning objectives of this section are refreshing of manual plotting theory, including definitions of plotting terms, error sources, speed to be used, etc. Since radar was introduced in ships after World War II, plotting devices have been designed, first of a simple construction, still used, but as time progressed, much more elaborated and sophisticated design came on the market. The main object is to reduce the burden on the radar observer, but they also aim to increase the accuracy, which is very important in all plotting. Plotting has two main purposes. It can show us where the danger of collision exists, how close we will pass the target, CPA, and how much time before this will take place, TCPA. Calculated target aspect is another interesting parameter which can be obtained from plotting. Here, only a brief repetition of the plotting principles will be given. There are many possible errors which may influence the plotting. It is important to be aware of possible errors and correct them if possible, or minimize their influence at all times. Here is a list of possible error sources which may affect manual plotting. Error in bearing, error in range, error in time between plots, low relative speed, error in own ship speed, error in own ship heading, error caused by own ship yawing, error due to own ship manoeuvring. A vessel, whether on the high seas or in confined dock or harbour, is continually being influenced by her environment. These influences can be from water movements, air streams, or from pressure built up within these mediums. The sea is subject to movement in the form of tidal streams, ocean currents and waves, generated by wind. If the purpose of your plotting includes requirements for obtaining information about targets, heading and calculated aspects, own ship's heading and speed through water must be utilised. Don't use speed over ground. Basically, there are two methods of plotting, true and relative. Both plotting methods can supply the information required. Which method is selected depends on the preferences of the navigator. In order to define what plotting is, we may divide the plotting process into 4 separate operations. Detection, recognition of the presence of a target. Selection, selection of targets requiring closer observation. Tracking, the process of observing changes in target position. Plotting, the whole process of target detection, selection, tracking, and calculation of target parameters. In this radar plotting example, a possible collision situation is illustrated, using both true and relative motion plotting. The plotting time is 1 hour. Marine radars have many limitations, and the centimetre radar does not show up the aspect or leading edge of a target. The aspect is defined red on target's port side and green on target's starboard side. Aspect is measured from dead ahead to 180 degrees on either side. Aspect appeals to a lot of navigators because it is so closely related to the visual conception when they sight a ship. Therefore, calculated aspect is a much wanted information required from plotting in addition to CPA and TCPA. Definition of aspect. Aspect is target's relative bearing of own vessel, taken from the target. To plan an avoiding action when you are working with relative plotting, you use a triangle marked with the letters WOA, known as the plotting triangle. The sides of the triangle represents courses and distances covered during the same time period. To further explain the plotting triangle and its uses, both a true and a relative plot have been illustrated here. The plotting triangle is determined by its own ships and target ships' movements. WA represents the target's movements during the period of observation. WO represents the own ship's movements during the period of observation, while OA represents target's relative movements during the period of observation. For educational and training purposes, and for use on board, there is a special plotting paper with spider web diagrams available. Of course, any piece of paper can be used, but the plotting sheet makes the plotting much easier. The plotting sheet can be used both for relative or north-up presentation. Whichever presentation you have on the radar, it is advantageous to plot with north-up, as you then can plot the bearings direct. By studying the following 4 figures, you should be able to gain a good understanding about how own ship's course and speed change affects the plotting triangle. That is, how to plan avoiding actions. The original plotting triangle, where WO represents own ship's movements, WA represents target ship movements, and OA is the relative movements. The situation after own ship has changed course 50 degrees to starboard results in increasing target relative speed and change in target's relative course. The situation after own ship has changed course 55 degrees to port results in no change in target relative course, but target relative speed decreases more than 50%. The situation when own ship keeps its course but reduces speed by 50%, in this case both target's relative course and speed change.